Welcome to Smooth Brain Radio, the talk show where we iron out the wrinkles of your brain, one topic at a time. What?
Do we need to stop again? What happened there?
I just heard a pop, and then that's it. That's all I heard you say.
Oh, okay, my bad. Well, anyways, we'll just keep going. A good comical start at the beginning of this one, because I'm gonna bring in something that just keeps, I don't know. Every time I dig into it so far, it's been leading me towards a very specific group of people in the past. So, but beyond that, I thought the idea of having today's show is what are things and how old are they really? I kind of stem all of this from a specific YouTuber or, somebody on Twitter, whatever case. I come across an episode, and he was kind of just looking through the history of things and reading Wikipedia pages out loud for the most part. But he was making some eye-opening moments for me. If we're part of this simulation theory that, I'm branded to at this point and fully enveloped, and to be honest with you, I 100% believe that we're in some sort of control mechanism. Even after researching this, it's just I can see all these little points this guy makes, and it's pretty interesting. But today I've got Lothens with me. It's just the Lothens and I today. Hey, Lothens, how you doing today?
Hello. We're doing all right.
All right. So I know that you're going to put me in a nice little straight jacket after this, more than likely. But that's all right. I think they fit fairly well for myself.
Well, this sounds like a conspiracy theory, and I do enjoy myself a nice conspiracy theory. They're delicious.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I'm excited
theory
about this.
Or fact?
Well,
Is it a theory or a fact?
Sometimes it just takes 50 years, and then it turns into fact. Who knows?
Right. Well, our batting averages here lately, not for us personally, but just globally, seem to be... There's a high ratio of wins for the theorists at this point, in my opinion. Sooner or later, we're absolutely going to know whether or not we landed on the moon indefinitely. You know what I'm saying? So, that being said, as a joke aside, today I'm going to kind of focus on what leads me all the time to the Tartarians, right? A group of people that were in Asia, perhaps well before our established loop, if you will, that we're currently on. Again, I base everything on a simulation, so I look at the input and the output of, why things change. Mandela effect comes to my mind whenever I say this type of thing. I remember explicitly Kit Kat having a dash in between it. You know what I'm saying? I remember watching the Genie movie with Homeboy. What was his name?
Sinbad.
Lord have mercy. Sinbad, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I vividly remember watching that as a kid. So
the Mandela effect
that's
is on my bucket list for the podcast, for sure. It's on my list of things I definitely want to cover because it's just freaking weird, okay? But, yeah,
right.
So...
I won't delve too far into it then, but I'll just make mention of it here that, for me, that is an input variable change, right? Somebody's sitting at the keystroke going, oh, shit, I messed up the code, I got to fix it here, all right? So whammo, gets fixed, introduced, and you got to eradicate or delete everything from the recycle bin. And unfortunately, his search terms didn't completely search everything, and we still got remnants. That's how I perceive Mandela effects, if the simulation theory is accurate. So this Tartarians things kind of throwing my brain through a loop, and the reason I say why are things as old as they are, you can look at some construction around the world, and you see a lot of similarities. You got pyramids all across the world, right? And supposedly the Egyptians did that 3,000 years ago, and they were the first. But if that's the case, then how do the Mayans have it, which have a predated history of the Egyptians, right? So who learned from who, and or were there people, that could just circumnavigate the globe fairly quickly, right? Because I mean that knowledge has to get passed, and the only ways that I know to get across the globe at that point in history was via a boat. So, and that wasn't, they take years depending on the type of ship. And if you look at history ships, advancements didn't really take off until when? The early 12 to, rest of our present day, I should say. 1200s, I think is what it was. No.
Well, do the
talking
ideas
about,
have to be shared amongst the different continents? Or, we talked about this on a previous episode, I believe, or maybe we were just rambling incoherently on Discord by ourselves one night. But I do recall a conversation like this where I was making the point where I can, when I was in high school, this is like a weird tie-in, but I would, go shopping with my mom. We were pretty poor growing up, so we didn't really get the cool stuff, but I would see like designs that I would like, jeans that I thought were cool that I wanted, but we couldn't get, right? They were like $80 or whatever.
Right.
And
Zeke Everidge.
yeah. And like immediately I would start seeing, like a bunch of kids wearing those jeans at school, or a t-shirt I really thought was, had a cool design on it or something. And then all of a sudden, immediately, it's like the most popular shirt. I see it everywhere, right? So is it just like your ideas are being permeated into the collective consciousness, and that's how everybody's making the pyramids at the same time? It's just like somebody had the idea, and then it just starts showing up everywhere at the same time, magically. I don't know how else to describe it. Or is it actually, does it have to be a shared, physically shared idea?
It would have to have been shared physically, in my opinion. Reason being is, look at the population of the planet right now. What is 8 billion, 9 billion people or something like that? 7 billion, something like that.
About 8.
All right.
Yeah.
And if okay. So we've grown in population year over year, right? And it's expected to be flattened out or start to self-depopulate around 2100. Right. That's when we'll start going into the negative population growth. I've pulled that up on a few of the research things. So the reason I'm bringing a population into this aspect of things is in the year 1200, for example, how many people do you think were on the planet?
Yeah, I don't know.
According to AI and the search result that I got, and I specifically asked for this time frame, I was like, what was the population, or has the population of the world from 1200 to 2023. And in 1200, approximately there was 400 to 500 million people on the globe. That's not a lot of people per territory, right?
Yeah, we've got almost that many in just the United States alone right now.
Right, and precisely
like 350 million.
My point. Right, so now if you go to the year 0, right? This is we know there's BC, BCE, whatever people want to call it nowadays. I call it BC, AD and BC. But BC, we know that there was humans on the planet. Yeah, right. But what do you think the population was from 0 to 1000 BC?
Well,
if what I just told you was 400 to 500 million.
Well, I know for sure
I'll tell
that. Okay, you tell me.
All right. Well, I want to know you're for sure before I tell you. That's all I want.
I was just going to mention that at one point in time, in Africa, when the ice sheets were coming down, we had what do you call it? The ice age or whatever was the Great Ice Age was happening.
The glaciers.
Yeah, the glaciers were spreading downward, and at some point in time in our very distant past, and we're talking modern humans, but we're talking, hundreds of thousands of years ago in Africa, when they started to spread out, there was we're down to maybe, the estimates is like around 2,000 people. 2,000 human beings alive on the planet at that point. And then we spread it into Europe and actually started to expand at that point, but it got close. But yeah, I have no idea.
Well, it can get even lower. It can get lower than just that. If you do the math, like in the year fucking zero, right? That's considered modern humanism, right? That's our Gregorian calendar is based on the year 0 to 2023. That's the time frame that we live in currently, right? So that was established history. From that point in time, 0, we said, all right, we will record everything and pass it along in a recorded fashion that is understandable, aka archiving.
Yeah, the common era.
I'm bringing in the conversation I had last. Yeah, right. So that being said, year 0, approximately 100 million people on the planet at that point in time. Now, you break that down into Jerusalem, right? Because that's where the condensed world was at that particular point. Africa, we spread out, and then we went to the Europes and the Asias, right? And then from the Asias onwards, outwards, according to evolution's theory, if I'm not mistaken. Darwin's evolution theory.
No, archaeology, not really evolution, but yeah.
But I mean, I'm talking about, the ape to human transformation. That's how that migration would have started. I count Lucy, if you will, as human number 1, right? Doesn't know, that's
a stretch. That's a stretch.
Well, I mean, I know it's a stretch, but that's when we started walking out and basically walking and communicating.
Upright.
How else could we
motion,
migrate outwards? Right. We migrated and we transformed from that point forward and became humans. So that's BCE bullshit. I'm talking about year 0. It really is more of a definite. That's human.
Right. Well, yeah. Year 0. I mean, you can go back to 4,000 BCE. Right. Before Common Era, 4,000 BC, if you will, and you're still, you're modern human, right? You can go back 100,000 years and you're modern human,
But archaeology has things that we can date back. The Egyptian pyramids, prime example, are 3,000 BCE, right? That's according to what they tell us in history. The Sphinx itself, which is located in the same, but 2, 3, 4 football fields away from the pyramids, is 12,000 BCE years old from my remembrance. I haven't looked this up in a long time. There may have changed it, but that's what I recall it being when the documents that I had read. So those generations, those are humans. We can't disregard them. But if you look at those architectures, the BCE architecture, you have things like Stonehenge. You have things that are built out of the ground or into the ground, right? You don't have large amounts of quarries to move stone to another location and erect something, right? You have things that are built from nature into nature on a large scale. So that's where, how old are things really? If the Sphinx is 12,000 years old and it's built like a modern day human structure, that we can't reproduce the pyramids themselves, which are 7,000 years newer in the year 2023, for example, without, doing it the exact same way, I should say. I mean, the same type of people, the same amount of people on top of that. I mean, you would have to have hundreds of thousands of people condensed into an area to move a 10,000 block stone. The reason I say that, because you're going to need all of those stones to be moved within a timely manner right after each other in order to get this thing done in the length of time that it takes to build, or according to what they say it took to build, right? So the population and the architecture don't match the technology, if you will, for the era. And I have a modern day source for this on what it takes to build just a basic medieval type house or castle, if you will. And the construction's still going on here in 2023, but it started in 1998, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay. So there's structures.
There was like a documentary about it when they first started. I loved it.
Right. So the Tartarian stuff, and I know we're getting ready to hit up on a break here in just a moment, so I'm not going to delve too far into it, but supposedly the technology of the Tartarian people would have been that of something far beyond what we have right now, because they were moving stones like the size of, the Egyptian pyramids, granite and all that jazz. Somehow.
Smooth Brain Radio will be right back after these messages from our sponsors. And you'd hear something right now if we had any. Welcome back to Smooth Brain Radio, ironing out your brain one wrinkle at a time.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome back.
I left off with the Tartarians and potential technology that we just don't have, right? So, rattle your brain real quick. When was the first?
I want to make a comment real quick.
Good.
Real quick before we jump off, because we're talking about time scales of massive time scales here. The craziest time scale fact that I know is that Cleopatra, a queen of Egypt, a pharaoh, is closer. Her being alive was closer in time to a living Stegosaurus being alive than to us right now, if I remember right.
It's a good thought train. Yeah, that's a pretty good thing to mention. There's another that I can think of that I know, but I can't think of it. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of crazy ass time scales we're looking at here, as far as that's how far back it is that we're talking about these structures being created by humans. It's unbelievable.
Right. I mean, I still have the most difficult time wrapping my head around, the pyramids, let alone the pyramids in Maya territory.
I'm second guessing myself big time here.
Cleopatra and Stegosaurus to us? I would think so, because she reigned in, 4,000, 5,000 BCE, if I'm not mistaken? Because the pyramids weren't built during her time frame. No, were they? The movies depict it as that, but you can't go off of that because that's where the corruption comes into play of the system of today, right? That's where the whitewashing of history, if you will, is a part of. So, and that kind of brings me to where I was going a minute ago. When was the election?
I'm wrong about that.
When were power tools invented?
About that. I'm a freaking.
Well, how close was it?
Moment. Not even remotely. Okay. She was born in 69 BCE, nice, and died in 30 BCE.
69 BCE.
So the difference between Cleopatra's death and is 2,053 years from right now.
And 150 million years ago was the dinosaurs.
What was I thinking? There is something like that with Egyptian
because
structures. Oh my God.
It's not even that. There's something that's more recent. Somebody was closer to being alive at Abraham Lincoln than you are to something else. It's something along those lines. It's a more modern take on it. But that being said, think of what we're talking. You made the example pure and simple. The amount of time from the year 0 to today, we know is 2,000 years plus.
Oh,
so
I read
there's
that
365
like
days in a year.
Now.
Wow. That's a bonobo moment. What can we say? That's what we're here for.
We're going to cut that out. We'll cut out the last 20 seconds. 2 minutes is fine.
Okay.
Nobody will ever hear it.
All right.
Ever. Never.
So, but when were power tools created? Do you remember? Do you know?
Ooh.
What time frame, I should say?
Power tool. Well, like battery-powered tools or electric-powered tools?
Oh, electricity. Electric power tools. Just power tools, pure and simple. Something that moved on a form of energy, if you will.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd say maybe the early 19th century, the 1800s.
It was in the 1800s, 1835, 1865, I think, one of those two periods.
From a bonobo moment to a wrinkly brain moment. There we go.
So, in the 1800s, how many people were around?
Well, hell, I don't know.
All right, approximately 1 billion at that point in time. Now, you got to remember, this is globally, right? So, if you spread 1 billion people out across the planet, how many people do you think you're going to have locally per area to build some of these most extravagant buildings in the world
just
during the 1800s within a year?
100,000 local residents maybe in an area.
Okay, right. But then you're going to have condensed cities like you do currently, right, which is, conglomeration, and those are all going to be around ports. Why? Because that's the main point, transportation in the 1800s. Correct.
Yeah, and you have to trade.
After, it's the 1870s, 1880s, I think, is when Ford built the automobile. After that, the ports no longer became, they amplified for a short period of time until the mechanical ship occurred, and then ports no longer really mattered. You could dock anywhere so long as you could build anything, because you could move anything with the vehicle at that point. Things became automated. I'm talking about pre-automation at this point in time. And there's buildings that are like, what the hell? Where'd you get the stone from, first and foremost? And I'm going to hit two major cities. One is in Detroit and one is in Indianapolis. And Indianapolis, right? So the college that was built in Indianapolis, University of Indiana, is a sprawling testament to how the hell did that shit get created with potentially 100,000 people, and where did they get the stone from? How did they get it there? In a year, they built it.
I mean, Indianapolis was founded relatively early in America's history, but it wasn't like the University of Indianapolis sprang up like the next year. That was...
Yeah, but you can go to Wikipedia and look at the founded date on it, and if I'm not mistaken, it says 1878 or 1895. So if we're hitting a population around 1900s, we're only 700 million more people on the planet globally. So there's not a huge increase of people, so you're not dramatically changing. You're going to go from 100,000 people per condensed location to 112. That's just random math out of the top of my head that sticks out for some reason.
What are we saying? That the aliens brought the stones for the University of IU?
Absolutely not. What I'm trying to say is look at the potential possibility of the building being there previous the people.
So it was already there, and then we showed up and were like, "Hey, this is pretty cool. We're going to take over this spot. We'll just use this building."
Kind of, yes.
Okay.
And if the theory holds true to the conspiracy, the Tartarians were the ones that had done all that previous. You know what I'm saying? Remember the other? I can't remember if it was an episode that we did or if it was just our general chatter, but to the victor goes the spoil of war, right? They write history. And what better way to control your population than to tell them a specific story of how history was? So that way history will always be, because we learn from our history on what not to do in the future. You see this
that's propaganda 101,
eventual loop. Oh, right, exactly, right. So that's it's not even propaganda. That's just, it's a loop that we structure civilization on. We have to learn from our past mistakes. That's what science is.
Let's say you break up with your girlfriend and you're telling the story about how the breakup happened to your buddy. You're going to make yourself sound better in the story than maybe you were, You're just going to spin it to look good on yourself and make her look like a piece of shit. That's just what we do,
Right. But science and history is supposed to be cataloged by the he, the she, and then the we. It's a consensus agreement that says, yeah, these things happened. And how do you get consensus? By scientific measurement, right? That's how I understand it to occur. So, and for that to happen, there's a civilization that lived or existed beforehand, right? You know, and they got wiped out for whatever reason, and you want to control the people going forward, you got to remove them, just like the Egyptians, the pharaohs did of previous pharaohs. They erased them from history by wiping them from the boards, the hieroglyphs, so that it could not be repeated, right? So the same principle
take down
applies
their statues, they destroy or they reappropriate their temples and redesign them.
Right.
For the new pharaoh.
So what if that's what if that's the system moving things to the trash bin and then repopulating the planet?
I looked up thanks to your link because I was having a hard time finding anything relative to this topic, and you helped me out here.
Okay.
So from my understanding, this is the reappropriation thing. It's believed that let's see, the Western world has reappropriated all these old structures. So all those fabulous buildings that popped up during the turn of the century world fairs were believed to be stolen pre-existing structures from the Tartarian Empire. As the theory goes, they were buried during a supposed cataclysmic mud flood and later excavated, resurrected, and claimed by Western civilizations as achievements of modern architecture. So I think that's what you're referring to here, where they dug this stuff up, they found the structures, and they're like, hey, this is really badass. What if we tell everybody we did this so they think we're badass, you know, and we'll show the world our power and our technological prowess using these structures and, like, you know, instill into the rest of the world how strong we are and how smart we are.
Correct. Now that I'm taking it to a little bit of a step further. All right, so from what I've also gathered, from what I've also gathered on the Tartarian stuff is it's highly linked to flat Earth, right? I mean, you can instantly spin right off into it being, you know, part of the flat Earth theory, if you will.
Well, if you are, I'm not
going to deny that.
You could easily spin right off of it. I mean,
yeah, that's very true. I mean, even if it's a turtle, we could tip over at some point. So,
what if the turtle farts? You know, come on.
Oh my God! I mean, that's global. That's Venus, if you will. But it's so. That being said, oh man, I lost my train of thought. I went into too much of a comical mode.
Well, you know, so reappropriating the things.
Right, and the college is a prime example. You can physically go do this project yourself if you're close to it, right? I've done some of these projects in the past for myself because I used to walk downtown Detroit all the time. I know that some of these buildings, or I just can feel from my remembrance of these buildings, like, yeah, that shit was probably older than what I've been told it was. You know what I'm saying? Because it just sticks out like a sore thumb in all of the other buildings around it, you know, especially the ones that they keep. The one in Detroit is the... oh, shit, where the hell did I have it? Somewhere over here.
While you're looking that up,
the Basilica St. Anne of Detroit.
Okay.
The St. Anne Basilica in Detroit is a historic Catholic church located in Detroit. It was founded in 1701, right? And the second oldest continuously operating parish in the United States. There is a sister church in Windsor, Ontario, directly across the river. The two look fairly identical, right? And the key word here is founded, right? So the whole founded thing for me, if you read or watch the Lunch Break dude that I referenced early on, he takes the word to its literal meaning, and it's very interesting. I'll tell everybody about that, though, on the flip side of this break here in just a few minutes. But just take things that they're literal and look at them with your own naked eye, and then understand that there's very few people that had no power, didn't have a vehicle to move big ass stones. They had horse and buggy, and they did it all by candlelight. And in Detroit, they did it in the winter.
Smooth Brain Radio will be right back after these messages from our sponsors. And you'd hear something right now if we had any. Welcome back to Smooth Brain Radio, ironing out your brain one wrinkle at a time.
Today, I don't know if we're ironing, creating, or doing what. I'm like literally I can get pulled in 1,000 different directions on each one of these little things. So, but before the break, I had said the word founded, right? If you take the word founded based on its literal term or the legal definition of it, based upon arriving from, growing out of, or resting upon, as in founded in fraud, founded in consideration, and the like, right? So it's something that existed, essentially. It's not something that was built, constructed, erected, those types of construction terms. It says that, it was there. And if you know anything about Detroit, right, it's right on a river. And this church is not even 2 miles, maybe, from the river itself. So the river winds, and if you've ever been down in Detroit, it's a windy city, just like Chicago. You know what I'm saying? The whole reason it's windy is because there's lakes that have absolutely nothing to block the wind from coming across. Yeah. And when it hits the land, it's very few trees because it's all city now. Right?
There's nothing protecting our dumbasses from Canada's weather down here.
Right.
Goddamn Great Lakes.
Well, not just Canada's. I mean, it comes up from, Ohio and all that jazz, because the river, the Detroit River, is a part of, was it Lake Michigan, I think is what it is? Or is it?
You're getting all of our Indiana farts floating up there. Nothing to stop them. Right. Hell yeah.
Well, no, that's coming from the Chicago Windy City, to be honest with you.
Well, one other thing that I found about this and is the idea in the Tartarian theory is that, and you may not agree with this, but the theory stated, from what I've read, was that the complexity and beauty of these structures could not have been achieved without some kind of advanced knowledge or technology. And you alluded to that. You're talking about horse and buggy, and you're talking about, not very many tools available, things like this. They're basically using a pulley system and carts to drag stuff around, and maybe logs to roll these blocks around and stuff like this. But
right.
One thing that kind of struck me, and I looked into something else related, was how are these things still standing from like ancient times, right? Like ancient Roman structures. We talked a little bit yesterday about the Parthenon and the great cathedral of Rome and all this stuff. So I looked it up, and what I found was ancient Roman concrete and other ancient building mixtures can self-repair over time, and we don't really know why. We don't know how it works, but we know that it can happen. But now scientists think they found a reason why some Roman concrete has held up structures for thousands of years. Chunks of lime are studded throughout the Roman material instead of being mixed in evenly. So previously, people thought, well, their technique to grind up the limestone wasn't really refined, and that's why you have these chunks in there. They didn't really do it right. And now later we're finding out that, concrete samples from Privernum, an ancient city outside of Rome, scientists have found that the chunks of lime still in there could fuel the material's self-healing abilities, So when cracks form, water is able to seep in from rainfall, and the water activates the leftover pockets of lime, sparking up a new chemical reaction, and that sort of fills in the damaged sections. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
So what are they doing to create this concrete structure? And by the way, you can't take this ancient Roman concrete mix and make skyscrapers. It's not strong enough. But it has that self-repair mechanism built into it. So
it could be used in its foundational matters, though, on a skyscraper, I would think.
Well, I mean,
at the foundation level or in the ground,
get crushed. It would just get crushed because it doesn't have the strength of modern concrete.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, because you need steel for a modern skyscraper. That's very true.
But
that's interesting.
Ancient mixtures from all over the world have all kinds of crazy shit mixed into them. So, for example, fruit extracts, milk, cheese, cheese curd, beer, even shit and piss have been found in ancient, like, building structure mixes around the world. The mortar
that's
that holds
biological matter.
Some of the Great Wall of China and the Forbidden City in China, some of the mortar, not the rocks, but the mortar holding the rocks together, includes traces of starch from sticky rice. So that, like, people were experimenting with all kinds of stuff, putting in their mix, their mortar mix,
Yeah.
back in ancient times. And the idea is that what worked is what we see now, right? That's what survived. And the stuff that the experiments that didn't work, we don't see it because it just crumbled to dust, right? So that was kind of like, okay, so people were pretty clever.
That makes
is
sense.
what I'm getting at,
Right, but look at what is it? The church it's in England, I think it is, the Basilica. Oh, Lord have mercy. Maybe Mark's Basilica, I think is what it is. Hold on. St. Mark's Basilica. Let me look it up real quick just so that I can verify this particular thing. I have it somewhere. I just want to verify and make sure that I'm talking about the right building. No, but it is one of the few. So if you want to look up the St. Mark's Basilica while I'm saying this building was supposedly created or quote unquote founded in 828 AD, right? So 800, almost damn near 1700 years ago, right? Now, what is this? Yeah, is it maybe less, 1200, 1300? Maybe, yeah, I'm not doing math. It's not it's not that bonobo show, okay?
It would be a little more than 1900 years ago.
Okay, so that church in 800, BC is going to have a population in the world that is lower than 500 million people globally, and just look at it. You know what I'm saying? That's all I can really tell somebody to do is look at that and go, there may have been 100,000 people in that area, and out of those 100,000 people, there was got to be so many dedicated, smart enough, and nimble enough to create this thing, right? The reason I say nimble is youth is a form of nimbleness, right? But you don't have wisdom with youth. So you're going to have the old people guiding the young people, moving everything all the damn time to build this thing. And it is a very intricate building. It's not the exact building I was thinking of. The one I was thinking of has all those crazy little spires that come up off of it, and it's got these little ornate bulbs that are around it. It looks like an old Indian type building from India. Maybe. I mean, again, I've got it. I've got 500 tabs open, and I shouldn't have done that today. So that was my fault.
Well, the Hagia Sophia is one of the 9 wonders of the world, or 8 wonders of the world, I guess. I said 9 because I'm a wrestling fan, and I got tricked into that shit. Okay, if you know, you know.
Okay, wait. I'm thinking of the Cologne Cathedral is what I'm thinking of. Is St. Petersburg. Or St. Peter Hosh Demonic St. Peter's. I can't read that. I'm not that. But it's the Cologne Cathedral in Germany, the Cathedral Church of St. Peter is what you could also look up. And it's crazy looking, right? And it was built, says years built 1248 to 1568, 1842 to 1880, and then in 1950 to the present has had restorations, right? So multiple churches have existed here.
What was the first timeline?
1248 to 1560, right? In 1248, there's 500
That's 300
million people.
years.
Yes. But it's multiple churches have constantly been erected there, right? Destroyed by fires.
Oh, you're
rebuilt.
not talking about
destroyed
one
by
thing.
fire. Yeah.
Okay.
But what's to say that it's ever been fully destroyed if it was founded in 1248, meaning that they stumbled upon it, right? Or it was already there, because if we're taking the legal term here, I'm taking it by its absolute legal definition here.
I'm going to argue your legal definition, the way you understand it a little bit here, because the way you read the legal definition of founded, and placed upon is what I think you're focusing in on. So you're assuming something's already there, some kind of structure's there. But I took that, when you read that, excuse me, when you read that and you, right before you went off and you gave me your interpretation of it, what I heard was rested upon the ground. Like they created the foundation. And that's when they founded that structure there on the ground. So I'll argue a little bit there. I'll be the devil's advocate and say I don't think it's referring to something that's a structure that's pre-existing. It's like these explorers come along, they find this shit there, and they're like, hey, we should build a city around this. I think it's more they founded it at a location in the ground, and they built around that. But that's just my interpretation. Right. So we have two different interpretations. Who knows which one is right,
Well, I'm going to throw AI's interpretation into this, right? So, and I haven't pre-read this at all. I generated the question earlier and with the what is the founded, and I copied the initial part. I only read the very first bullet point out loud to you and based everything off of that. Now, the summary of AI is, in general, founded can imply a sense of being based on or arising from something, whether it to be fact, evidence, or particular circumstances. In legal context, it may also be used to describe a claim, suspicion, or an accusation that is supported by evidence or has a basis in fact. Right? So
what
being
referring
arisen
to there
from or founded from.
What it seems to be referring to specifically there is an idea that is founded upon another idea that came previous, like you're just building on what was already there in the realm of a thought.
So now look at the churches, then look at those and go, how did they create that? And I'm not trying to sink you at all, right? I'm just trying to add the wrinkle there to be like, all right, you got to look at that and think of the population around the globe. If we're breaking it down to the 100,000 per 100 million or 1 billion, there's very few people to generate those ideas from, because you're going to have the young that move the stuff, you're going to have the old that know how to build it, and then you're going to have, the horse and buggy to move it. So that's dedication and all that jazz. That's going to come to creating those structures that are standing damn near 1,000 years later in the future.
Yep.
That's where the mystery comes from in this whole Tartarian thing, for me, and at least. And it twists my brain because the simulation aspect also comes into play for me, because if it is a simulation and a building was there previously, that meant that there was another layer of code that's no longer running, right? And or it's an anchor point, if you will, for the map of the world that is being created. That's why we have the 7 wonders of the world, 8 wonders of the world, whatever, however many you want to throw into there. I mean, there's a 180-foot statue of some dude over in India. It's the tallest stone statue in the world, right? That's a modern-day creation. And it took years and years and years for them to build that thing. Not one single year that it was founded in the 1800s. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you can legit go look at things, and it's crazy. But on the next side of the break, we'll get you.
Break. Smooth Brain Radio will be right back after these messages from our sponsors. And you'd hear something right now if we had any. Welcome back to Smooth Brain Radio, ironing out your brain one wrinkle at a time.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Lothens just said something during the commercial break that just like tickled my fancy. So yes, I'm doing one of those clutch moments right now. Faces.
I tickled him.
But that being sweet Jesus. All right, so that brings me on to the next layer of things. Now I'm going to bring some of the old world, because that's what the Tartarian stuff is considered part of, right? The old world of history that we are being denied taught, or being denied existed, or you know, being modified, that said, hey, no, we didn't find this building, we founded this building, and everything else around it looks like absolute dog shit, but this building that is just so immaculate, we did this, so you know you can do this yourself. You know, that's part of the propaganda line, if you will. Hey, you know, we got cool tech, such as disappearing airplanes from the sky mid-flight, so I'm sure that we're not being told everything. And if the simulation exists the way I think it does, then we're fixing to make some leaps and bounds really quick, especially with AI toys that we have in our hand. So yeah, I'm going to rewind way back into history. Yeah. All right, so way back in history, what is one of the oldest... I've got a set of buildings, or I asked AI itself, name the oldest buildings in the world and when they were created. Can you tell me what you think is the oldest building? All right. What's the oldest building I spit out to you?
I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't
okay.
I didn't keep the tab open. Right, it listed off like 5. One of them was two of them were in France. The second and third oldest were in France. And I think the first was in Iraq, but I don't know like the names of them.
Oh, wow. You're actually the second, or at least I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 listed here. Or sorry, 10. And number 7 is actually France. And then number 6 is France. The oldest to date is in Turkey, and it's Göbekli Tepe, or Göbekli Tepe. It was found, or supposedly built, in 9,000 to 9,500 to 7,500 BC. So approximately 9,500 to 7,500 years ago. After that is the Tower of Jellicoe, Catahoula.
11,000.
I don't know how to actually pronounce that.
You got to add 2,000 to that number. We're in the 2000s post zero.
Well, yeah, because so that's 12,000 or 11,500 years ago for Göbekli Tepe. Yeah. I mean, we live 100 years, right? Yeah. So, and the population, remember population.
We don't live 100 years. That's the problem. We live like 80 years if you're lucky, and before modern times with modern medicine, you lived 50 years, and you were old as dirt. Like you were in your 1 foot in the grave. So we're talking about. Oh yeah, we're talking about people that lived at best into their 40s with health, and at worst into their 30s with good health, and then it declined.
Exponentially
12,000 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so from the year 0 to 1000 CE, I requested some information from AI, and it said that there was approximately 100 million people on the planet then, right? So, and then from 1000 to 1500, 400 million. So the AI is keeping in line with at least the AI that I asked is keeping in line with its date and times. So, but if there's only 100 million people on the planet, and you look at Göbekli Tepe and think, okay, yeah, I can see us building that 100%. Why? Because it's from the earth, in the earth, made of earth. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how else to say that. It's basically an erected cave and a series of other, functions and structures that are throughout there, but there are no houses or churches that are standing during that time frame, right? And then you get to modern American history, if you will, because that's when our history as we know it is presented to us. 1776, America was created. And then all of a sudden in the 1800s, we're building these gargantuan buildings in a year's time with 100,000 people potentially, up to 100,000 at that point. I don't see it feasible. I can see him finding this shit, digging it out, and going, hey, look what we built. You know what I'm saying? More than walking up and going, all right, I'm going to build this building. It's going to look like this, sketch it all out, and do it in a year's time. I don't see it. And especially if you look at the storylines that come with these architects that are any one of these old buildings you can think of. You may have some in your town, right? Look them up, find the founded date, see if there was a fire that occurred within a year and they had to rebuild the building. Most of the time, this happens anywhere from, I'm going to say, early 1700s to the late 1800s. I mean, some of them stretch into the 1910s, things like that. But by then, our history is already 100 years established, and the illusion of, or the propaganda that would have perpetrated, spread across the United States at that point would have been that of, look what we can do anything. It's impossible. We can't, nothing's impossible for us. So, right. And that would stem from a previous generation, especially if we don't have the light bulb at that point, we don't have no power tools, and these buildings are all erected with the ability to store, like you said, its mortar in a state that can regenerate itself. I've never heard this before, but I mean, these buildings are still standing, so there's something in the mortar, right? Has to be, or the mortar itself would crumble, or you would have to have precision aligned stones that would just never move. I mean, I don't know how else to make stones stack and stay together forever other than mortar, or perfectly cut, you know what I'm saying, to match with a notch of some sort, not to wiggle and all that jazz. I mean, you got to think there, logically here. It's got to be a Lego block, basically, is what I'm thinking here.
And you see evidence of that in ancient, megalithic structures where they literally form-fitted each rock into each other. They built
what is that?
These walls and stuff. That was crazy as hell.
Was that part of No, that's not Göbekli Tepe. Go ahead. There's I'm thinking of the stones that look like a letter H, and they have these grooves inside of them. Yeah. I mean, they look like really intricate Lego blocks. And supposedly the area had blown up, according to the ancient alien theory show that's on Discovery. I can't remember what the hell the name of the place is, but those stones came to my mind instantly.
Names. They all have really wild names. Absolutely. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but yeah, you see evidence of that where they literally form-fit these rocks and they chip away to get them exactly, perfectly aligned to fit in and fit in and fit in and fit in. They just build up from there. But yeah, with the ancient concrete and stuff that I mentioned earlier, the Roman concrete, that's a different ideal. That's putting another element in the mix of things that could go wrong with this construction over time, and like I say, it's just impressive. But I mean, we're coming up on, we're getting close to the end of the episode. I know it's a very sad time for everyone. The end of the episode is always a tearjerker for me specifically, and I know it is for you, the listener, as well, our beloved listener. But I want to ask you this, nFxus, because this is your topic. You are the guy who should know this more than me, and I'm
supposed to be the expert in the topic. Right.
So now, one part of the Tartarian theory that I found that really caught my attention was
Okay.
that the Tartarian theorists believe that many architectural marvels from the past attributed to the Tartarian Empire were not aesthetically significant, were not only aesthetically significant, but also functionally crucial in harnessing and distributing free energy. Now, do you have any
Okay.
thoughts on that whatsoever?
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at the Westinghouse, which was where Nikola Tesla built his big old tower, right? I mean, there's still photos of it. So
Yeah.
if you don't know it, that recently just got burnt down. You know that, right? I think it happened within the last 50 years, or maybe even shorter time frame than that. But that there's an aerial photo of it, right? So the aesthetics of things. So let me re-ask your question again, so I can refresh it in my head because I
Well, yeah,
started venturing
it
off
just
too far.
says that many of the theorists of the Tartarian Empire believe that the architectural marvels of the past were not only aesthetically significant as far as their design, their look, but also functionally crucial in harnessing and distributing
Yep.
free energy.
All right, I remember what you're talking about now. All right, so
Yeah, yeah.
right off the gate, the Westinghouse popped in, and Tesla learned from the old world, if you will. He lived in the time frame of, if I'm not mistaken, the 1700s to the 1800s, right? Or 19, was it the early 1800s, the pre-marker, if you will, of all the buildings burning? Because the marker is 1830 to 1850, if I'm not mistaken, by just recollection right now. He was born in the early 1800s. He lived into the 1900s. And the dude's a genius. We absolutely all know that. If you don't know that by now, then I don't know what planet you live on or simulation you're running in. So,
Yeah.
if you
yeah,
look
yeah,
at some of where he studied, he went to, old places in India. And in India's, their book or whatever,
Bhagavad
Gita
Gita.
or whatever the hell. Yeah, thank you. And if you look at their architecture around there, there's some spires that I caught my attention earlier today in some searches that look mechanical in nature, like they're producing energy, if you will, or distributing energy, because they look like a modern day antenna for us, as far, not a radio antenna, but
Okay.
like a distribution model for energy. Things spin. If you look at a rotor, you got a stator, you got a rotor, and you got a magnetic coil that spin around things, then produces electricity in an enclosed system. Well, how do you open that up? Well, you invert everything and then allow the atmosphere to be your conductor, if you will. That's how Tesla built his
Okay.
tower. It's just this big, huge open ball. If you stand next to a Tesla coil, it is a ball that opens up to the atmosphere, and then you become part of the equation, if you will, for the energy.
Yeah.
I mean, you become the
And your hair
grounding
stands
point.
up.
If exactly, right? I mean, that's, yeah. But that being said, yes, that stuff was built into all the technology, and there's proof of it in the pyramids for everybody to see, as far as some hieroglyphics. I mean, I think you and I talked about it at one point in the past, that those
Yeah.
things are straight up light bulbs. I don't see anything other than a modern day light bulb, and the battery came out of Baghdad, right? So if they had that
Baghdad
technology
battery,
during
yeah.
that, yeah. So
Well-
that stuff that's old. That's technology that we didn't recreate until the 1800s, late 1800s, if you will. And then from there, it just has grown exponentially. So,
Well, I'm going to give
but
my closing statement real quick, and then you can bring us home. Okay.
all right.
So it's also believed that certain architectural design symbols and placements were intentionally used to encode and preserve the knowledge of this free energy system, hoping it would be rediscovered in the future. And you alluded to Tesla, maybe he picked up something somewhere. But my thoughts are that no civilization, including ours, ever believes they'll eventually crumble to dust again. Therefore, there's no reason to believe these people would intentionally design structures to outlive their own civilization so that their technology can be rediscovered by regressed, less advanced people in the future. In my opinion, advancement happens over time, not regression. So that's my thought.
Okay. I can see that. For me, in a final closing statement, if you will, on this whole thing, it's the cat scene in the Matrix, if you will. Because when you watch that cat walk by, you see the world tumble behind it and reset itself. And then after that, everything is different. The world around him is different. The walls and the windows are bricked up. What's to say that the simulation just isn't resetting itself and doesn't know how to empty its trash bin fully on its next boot?
Almost unnoticeable, but it is there, changed, right?
Yeah. It's got to, and we have to explain it somehow.
And then if you notice it and you tell people, it's the Mandela effect.
Or you're a conspiracy theorist. And I'll probably sit in that box.
Well, I'm going to throw in a thanks for tuning in for this episode 5 of the podcast. If you like the show and you want to support us, come to the Discord. We're going to put the link in the description, and you can get access to special stuff behind the scenes. Goodbye. I love you.
Peace.
Join us next time for more Smooth Brain Radio. And don't forget, keep that one brain cell healthy until then.